In order to get started with software development, there are two basic tools that we're going to need. First of all, we're going to need whatever language-specific tools are necessary. I'm going to use the generic term, the compiler. So if you're developing Python, you need Python 3 installed. If you're developing Java, you need the JDK installed. This video is going to assume that you've already done that step, whichever language you are using. If not, then you need to stop here, go back to Canvas, and install those tools so that you're ready to go. An IDE is an integrated development environment, and it is meant to be a set of tools that give you an editing environment for developing your code. At its core, writing code is just using a text editor, but in order to help us visualize our code and to help us run and debug our code, an IDE can provide functionality that is language specific that will help us, for example, it'll give us a button we can click to run our code and things of that nature. There are many, many, many IDEs out there and a lot of very good IDEs. I'm going to recommend that you use an IDE called Visual Studio Code. Now, it ultimately doesn't matter because the source code that you develop is the same no matter what IDE you used. And in fact, I likely won't even know which one you're using based on what you submit. But Visual Studio Code is a nice, simple, lightweight option. It's one that I know well, so I can help you if you have trouble with it. And it works on a wide variety of languages, essentially almost every programming language you can think of or want to develop in, you can use Visual Studio Code for that, and there will be a set of tools to help you out. If you have a compelling reason to use something other than Visual Studio Code, like you have experience with something else, that's probably fine. But even so, I would encourage you to maybe at least try Visual Studio Code, keeping in mind that you can have multiple IDEs on your system and they won't interfere with each other. In order to get started with Visual Studio Code, we're going to go to a website that is code.visualstudio.com. And we have to be very careful here because Microsoft, this is a Microsoft product, and they have another product called Visual Studio. And Visual Studio is an IDE, but it's not the one we want for this. Among other things, it's generally a paid product, although there is a free version. But it's different than Visual Studio Code, and we want to make sure we're on the page for Visual Studio Code. The web page is going to detect your operating system, and it's going to try and offer you the correct platform, the correct installation package. If it detects incorrectly, you can always just click on other platforms, and you can get a whole list here. I'm going to go ahead and download the one for Mac. And it will download this program. I won't make you watch while it does, and it is going to give you some documentation while you wait. All right, so my download is complete, and I'm going to go ahead and find that file. It is probably in your downloads folder, but your browser probably has a way to find it as well if I say show in Finder. So I downloaded it as a zip file. If you didn't get it in a zip file, it might just say Visual Studio Code already. Do not run that yet. What I'm going to do is unzip this one. And once you have that Visual Studio Code file, what we want to do is now drag that into our applications folder. So I'm just going to grab that there and drag it over to applications. I've already got this installed on this computer, so I'm not going to replace it. There's no reason for me to replace it. I'll go ahead and cancel that, but you shouldn't get that warning. All right, once I've put that in the applications folder, I can click on that applications folder and find it. It probably is alphabetical down near the bottom, and you can open it from there. You will very likely get a warning the first time, warning you that this was a downloaded program. Do you really want to open it? So you will allow that to happen, of course. And in the future, by the way, however you like to launch your programs, if you like to use the Spotlight to find it, it'll be there. If you use the Launchpad, it should be on there towards the end. So once it's installed, you're good to go. When it opens, you're greeted with this kind of welcome page. And it's got this user interface that lets you go through and set up the environment the way you want it. I'm not going to linger on that right now. You can always do this later. You can pick a theme and come back and do some of those other things. What I'm going to do is close this Welcome tab, and I'm going to direct your attention to this little navigation bar over on the left. And so up at the top, we've got this icon that we call the Explorer. That one's going to be one we use a lot, and we'll get to it in a little bit. But down at the bottom is one called Extensions. The idea with Visual Studio Code is that the program itself is really lightweight. It doesn't have a lot of stuff in it. And then you, as the user, you pick the extensions that you want to add in, and those are like plugins that will give you additional functionality that is specific to whatever you're working on. I happen to like this a lot because I don't want a big bloated IDE that has a bunch of stuff that I don't need or don't use. This way I can start with a clean version of Visual Studio Code, and if I want to work on Python, I can add some Python tools. If I want to do Java, I can do Java tools, and HTML, I can do HTML tools, and so on. There are many extensions out there for almost any programming language you would be interested in. In this case, I'm interested in Python, so I'm going to use the search bar up at the top to type in Python. There are going to be a lot of results here because there are a lot of tools out there for Python. It's a popular language, and Visual Studio Code is a popular IDE for it. The very first one is Python, and it's got 132 million downloads, so you know it's a big deal. We're going to move down a little ways, and we're going to look for the Python extension pack. And the idea here is that this packages up a handful of useful Python tools, including that Python extension. So if I install this one, I get that plus a lot of other helpful stuff. So I'm going to confirm that it's the correct one by looking at the number of times it's been downloaded. This time it's over 9 million, but whenever you're looking at this, it will be millions. It will be hugely popular. And then I'm going to click the install button, and I'll pause the video because this will take a little bit of time, and then I'll restart it when it's done. All right, this is finished installing, and I can tell because the install button now says uninstall. And that's about it for the setup of Visual Studio. In the next video, we will create some folders to get us ready for the class, and we'll try writing our first Python program to make sure this worked.